Ah, model traction engine. Busy little fellow, isn't he? Or should we call him she? Look at these pistons flashing in and out. A perfect little engineering job. Here she comes, trundling along just as her big sister does down the country road. An exact replica down to the minutest detail. Clever, isn't it? But then it was made by an engineer and an artist in models. They call it work, but there's a lot who would call it play. A lot of you were probably lucky enough to possess model locomotives, ships, or cars when you were young. And if you did, undoubtedly you enjoyed a great many hours with them. Even those of you who weren't so fortunate must admit you feel a little envious of the possessors. We say further, with small fear of contradiction, that if you are young in heart, these little models still have a fascination for you. And what are the men who make them? Let's go and watch some of them at work. First, a passing glimpse of coach making. Here they're being cut out to size from ready-printed sheets of metal. Then each one is stamped out to the correct shape with an overlapping piece all round. This machine then presses down the overlapping piece, folding them over until here we have the finished sides of the coaches all ready to be fastened to the ends and bases. Of course, we can't all have such a layout as this, but think of the fun we'd have if we were so lucky. Passenger and goods trains, stations, signals, tracks and everything. The Coronation Scott, a beautiful model electrically driven from ordinary house lighting, running on rails 1/100th the size of the real track. No engine can run without wheels, of course, and in these models they have to be just as well made as in the real job. Here we have what is known as piston landing, an intricate and highly skilled operation. They may not look very inspiring, but they constitute the heart of the motive power. Assembling the engine is a specialist's job. Each and every part or unit has to fit into its place with the same degree of accuracy that applies to any other engineering job. This is a steam model, and when it has been assembled, it'll go to be tested. Before going on this track, the boiler is submitted to a pressure test, which is considerably higher than the pressure it would normally have to undergo. Then round and round this track at different speeds. This particular locomotive is carrying just over 11 pounds in weights in its tender. These weights, which constitute the load the engine is expected to carry, are continually being changed during the test, and the result is closely watched by the tester. Notes are made, and any faults are immediately corrected. The finished job must be absolutely right. After the test, the color is sprayed onto the boiler. Even in this operation, correctness is necessary. It would never do to have a maroon-colored model of a Great Western locomotive. Painting in the different colored lines on the boiler, engine cab and tender is done by hand. It is called lining and calls for exact precision. We're waiting to be done. And we've been done. We have all exact replicas of our big sisters and all ready to give hours of pleasure to some young man and probably his father. Now, doesn't she look like the real thing? She is in every way. And there she goes. If only the 6:30 home in the evening would shift like that. She's a model of the Victory. And, oh, never mind, she won't wait. Everybody knows you have to have rails on which to run trains, and here we see small gauge electric lines being made. They're on a Bakelite base, and are so constructed that although they have the central rail for electrically driven models, they can also be used for either steam or clockwork. No railway would be complete without stations, signal boxes, bridges, and so forth. And as in the case of the engines and coaches, these are all miniature replicas, correct in every detail. Here she comes. Whoa there, look out! And there she goes. The making of the larger type rails. Here the metals are laid on sleepers, exactly as on the real track. They are held in position by chairs, which are in turn pinned to the sleepers, and once again, precisely as on the full-size railroad. In dealing with straight stretches, this is, well, straightforward. But when it comes to points, crossovers, and so on, the job is more intricate. Points must work quickly and easily, because these little models can travel very fast, and a bad working set of points can easily cause a very nasty smash-up. All ready to go. Looks nice, doesn't she? Right away. And here comes a fast good. And what's that? The Royal Scot, and isn't she in a hurry? London to Glasgow non-stop, and no mistake about it either by the look of things. This is some railway. Perfect miniature steam models, expresses and locals. Take your choice. And here she comes again. Must be nearing Carlisle by now. See the steam from her safety valves? Where these scenes were photographed, there were 1,400 feet of track. It's taken years to build, but what fun. If you prefer electric trains, they are here. Exact replicas in every detail. And here comes the old goods, chugging its way slowly up the incline, pulling its full load, and like her big sister, just refusing to be hurried. Off she goes into the goods yard to deposit her load, well satisfied with her journey. And here, from the carriage sidings, comes a busy little tanker. You've seen them pulling the coaches into the station, haven't you? A made-up train, all ready to have that great express locomotive hitched on before starting on its journey. A scale blueprint of a model ship. You know those marvelous miniatures of famous liners? Here we have one of the Winchester Castle, a beautiful example of exceedingly fine craftsmanship. There are literally thousands of component parts in the making of models such as this, and each one is a perfect piece of work. Let's visit the workshops and see what happens. First, a set of blueprints are made in which everything is drawn to scale. This one is of the Dominion Monarch, the largest motor ship ever built in England, and the one whose birth and growth we'll watch. Here is the rudder, cast out of a piece of brass, exact in its shape and measurements. The stern view of the hull with the rudder attached. Then to the bows, cut out of solid pieces of timber, they are shaped and smoothed down until they fit perfectly into place, and their symmetry is a joy to behold. The wood used is white African mahogany. The hull, of course, is a continuation of the bows, the same piece of timber, or rather timbers, running throughout. Heavy cross pieces of timber are fastened inside the hull, keeping the whole thing rigid. And now let's look at some of the hundreds of component parts. Here the winches are being made. Each one is a perfect piece of work, and each one comprises many individual parts, complete in themselves. They are made out of brass and are so excellently constructed that they work in exactly the same way as the winches one finds aboard a big liner. Incidentally, winches are used for winding in the ropes and hawsers. You can see the pulley wheels. Some finished work: steam winch, engine room telegraph, compass and binnacle, steering wheel, and bollard. The propeller is another example of precision engineering. Here it is being buffed or polished. There are 4 of these propellers, or screws as they're professionally known, and each, as you see, has 4 blades. They're so well made that when finished and placed in position, one has only to breathe lightly to cause them to revolve. And now let's wander across to another corner of the shop, passing other men, each of whom is a specialist in his own job, until we see the anchor chain in course of construction. This man is putting the small studs in the links, another delicate operation, as each stud must fit exactly. They are then carefully sweated in over a small flame. Work on the hull is progressing meantime, and here a part of the captain's bridge is being cut out. This is more difficult than it looks. And here we come to a miscellaneous assembly of various fittings, each and every one perfectly made. Your chair, madam. These chairs are all built to scale, and in the finished model, placed exactly as on board the liner itself. You can even choose where you would like to sit when you book your passage. Can you see those beautifully made anchors? Fine jobs of work. Not only the exact size and shape, but also the correct weight to scale. While all these fittings are being made, workmen are still cutting out and building in the various wooden parts of the model. Not exactly like one of our large factories, but a very compact little workshop, in which every worker is a specialist in his own job. Can you see the ship in the background? Before the keel is laid down, stocks are built, just as in a shipbuilding yard. The model is then built up on them and not removed until absolutely complete and ready to leave the workshop. And what have we here? Looks odd, but when completed, it'll be a swimming pool. And in the background is the start of what will be a cafe. And now let's take a look at the promenade decks, upper and lower. If you're ever to have the luck to travel in the Dominion Monarch, it is from here that you would see the marvelous sights that greet the traveler on a cruise. And it is along here that you'll take your daily stroll. And so onto the bridge, that holy of holies, which is the pulse of the ship, from whence all orders come, the home of the captain and his officers. And finally to the forecastle, and a peep at those finely shaped bows. The funnels, to the uninitiated, but to those who have served and travelled in ships commonly called smokestacks. It is generally by the colour and type of these funnels that most liners are identified. This man is fixing the wire ropes which hold these great stacks steady throughout storms. By this time, the hull has been shaped off and smoothed down, and no more work is necessary. And now, for a while, let's leave this marvellous model and take a look at one or two of those other little boats which are such a frequent sight on lakes and pools. Here we have a perfect model of a destroyer, something that is within the reach of the pockets of most of us. Nice little craft, isn't she? Running by electricity, just a couple of torch batteries, if you can find any, and she's away across the water, reeling off the knots, just as her big sisters of the Royal Navy. And what have we here? Ah, yes, the internal workings of a model steam-driven speedboat. May not look very impressive, but each of these parts is a complete engineering job in itself. There can't be any slipshod work because they have to work, and moreover work properly. She is capable of considerable speed and can run for half an hour without stopping. And as she scuds across the water, she must bring back to you memories of those exciting speedboat trips you took when on your holiday at the seaside last year. Beautiful lines, hasn't she? And there's no hesitation about her either. 80 pounds pressure to the square inch, with the propeller turning at 1,500 revs per minute. See the bow waves being thrown up as she cuts her way through the water? And look at the steam coming from her funnel. Regulated steam is made by a methylated spirit container. Another grand little job from the hands of the makers of models, and one that cannot fail to give enjoyment to someone somewhere. And now, after that brief spell, let us return to the workshop and see what's happening to our big model. Hi there, what are you doing? Yeah, that's a fine idea, taking all the trouble to put it together and now taking it to pieces again. Yes, pulling it to pieces, but it's all part of the job. The model has to be absolutely complete in every detail before a paintbrush is allowed to touch it. And so now, the whole thing has to be dismantled for the painters. Off come the deck houses, off come the captain's bridge, off come the promenade decks. Off comes the main deck, beginning to look quite undressed, isn't she? But just wait till she's been through the painter's hands. Ten days pass, and here she is in all her glory, an exact replica of that world-famous motor ship, the Dominion Monarch. Everything is in place. Everything is exact. Winches, masts, funnels, davits. Remember that covered-in space? Well, here it is, all fitted out with tables, chairs, miniature buffets, and everything but the folks and the drinks. And if you remember the swimming pool, here it is, all completed. Looks almost good enough for a swim, doesn't it? But if you look inside, you'll find one end is deeper than the other, just as it should be. And again, that holy of holies, the captain's bridge. See the winch and port light? And looking astern, we find everything in order. And so, after final inspection, this graceful model of a graceful ship is ready to leave the workshop. There have been approximately 5,000 hours' work on her. She is 14 feet long, she has 16 coats of paint on her, and all fittings and parts are perfect reproductions. And every man who has contributed even in the smallest degree to the building is an artist in models.